Hi, Chris.
Hi, I'm Chris Wilson from Grinding Gear Games.
There's a new league coming up. Any buffs for Explosive Arrow?
No.
Any nerfs?
Yeah.
Is it still gonna be playable?
Yeah.
Nice. Hi, Zizaran here with another build for the upcoming Kalandra League, and this is an insanely strong build that I've played a lot, Explosive Arrow. It did get a nerf, and the nerf is more than fine to play. In fact, leveling should be slightly more comfortable than it was last league because the hit portion is getting buffed slightly, which is what you use early. We don't co-ignite instantly. Later on, the ignite obviously has been nerfed, but should be more than enough. A little bit about this build. It is an insane do everything build, but it does have some downside. It is totem. It is a totem build. Not everybody likes the totem playstyle. You have to place your totem. The totem has to attack. Then that arrow has to detonate, and that does damage. So not everybody likes that playstyle, but as you can see in the background, it is incredibly smooth. And now we can switch to showing you the leveling process. Early on, you can see I'm doing splitting steel. Splitting steel is a steel skill, so you need to like pull in the steel shards to actually do damage. If not, you're hitting like a wet noodle. Very, very smooth. And then as early as 28, even without leveling gear like Quill Rain, you can switch to Explosive Arrow. This is something we have so many videos for that are still pretty up to date. They are one patch behind, but outside of the nerf, not that much changed. So we have min-max videos. And we also have a 7-hour EA with me. It's a everything explained where for 7 hours, I play very slowly through the game and I do everything. So check that out as well. The number one thing you could fuck up when switching to Explosive Arrow at 28 is not everybody realizes how important a fast bow is. So the fast bows is short bow, grove bow, and thicket bow. They have 1.5 attack speed. Really just want as much attack speed as you can. Any flat damage or anything doesn't matter. Like you obviously don't want fire. We'll explain that later. Physical damage, cold damage, anything like that doesn't matter. It is all about the attack speed. Leveling uniques for this build, Storm Cloud is really good and Quill Rain is insane. If you find a Quill Rain, it would be one of the smoothest leveling experiences you've ever had. For clear speed, it is pretty good, probably a 6 or 7 out of 10. Speed-wise, you can obviously get faster things, but this is such a great like Omni build, right? And by Omni, I mean it just does everything. It does bosses, it does clearing, and it's incredibly tanky. It's very, very easy to play. We had so many players that are completely new to the game be able to kill like uber bosses on software. So let's take a bit more of a look at the PoB section. As normal, we do have leveling trees. So it's very, very easy to see that we have everything step by step, easy to follow. We also have different endgame trees, one with endgame and that's more generic one. And then one with Unnatural Instinct, which is very, very insane for this build because you get all these small nodes. You obviously don't get the notable. The endgame tree has changed a little bit from last league because it's harder to get spell suppression now, so we have more on the tree. Make sure you check out the notes section. Everything you could have a problem with should be mentioned here. Any struggles you would have with playstyle, leveling, why we aren't an elementalist. An elementalist is still a decent choice. How to counter, like no rain of splinters. For example, you could use a dying sun. Worst case scenario, there are a lot of options. Make sure you look at the notes. Rain of Splinters is very, very big and can be a pain not to find. It basically means that you'll need to use LMP or GMP, whatever you feel like. Once you get Rain of Splinters and you can have additional damage support, that becomes really, really powerful. Another unique that is very important and a bit of a downside to the build is Diadem Dawn or Ignite attack builds. And as you can see, it's very strong. It has a lot of life, a lot of resist, and Ignites deal 42% damage faster. Something that's very important for this is to 20 quality. You can use elemental or attack modifiers, and that'll give you 7% more damage. And the reason it's so strong is that we're igniting for longer than needed, so we're always reapplying the ignite. So early on, the only thing that matters is if you can get a short bow with even like 8 to 10% attack speed, that is pretty much enough to take you to like early match. Hopefully, if you're in trade league, just buy a Quill Rain. It'll be so big. And it is honestly very hard to replace a Quill Rain, especially if you're able to get a Tabula or a 6-link chest in general. And then we have such a good thing about this build that it's very, very easy to get a 6-link short bow. And in the notes, you can see how to create like the bows as well. And yeah, they're very easy to make +3 bows. However, to replace the clothing, you're basically looking at you need a +3 bow with attack speed and ideally open suffix for the minion attack speed. And the reason the minion attack speed works for our build is that we have spiritual command. Increases and reductions to minion attack speed also affect you. And that is the name of the game. We want as much attack speed as possible. So very hard to replace Quill Rain, but you really want to. In the endgame gear, you can see you really want to focus a lot on damage over time multiplier. Increased damage over time or elemental damage with attack skills is good as well, but damage over time multiplier is insane. And you can see all the gear has like suppression. We've put in the implicits that you would want from Exarch and stuff like that as well. Anoint, you really want Watchtower. There are several cheap ones, like for example, Aspect of the Eagle. You have Ash, Frost, and Storm. You could also end up doing one of the things like Instinct for suppression if you need more suppression. But you really want to get Watchtowers because 6 totems is huge for this build. If you are struggling to get 6 totems, you could use a Skirmish, especially if you're on softcore. But on hardcore, obviously, you do want to get a little extra tank. But yeah, Skirmish is absolutely doable early game. And for defenses and things like that, this build does use a lot of Life Flasks for a sustain. We don't get a large amount of regen. I've experimented a little bit in the past with getting like 7 or 8, even 900 regen by running Vitality and stuff like that, and going very hard on Loathing Essences, for example, on Chest and Helmet for increased reservation. This is very minimized and hard to do, but the options are there. But you will be recovering a lot of life based on your Life Flasks. What I like to do for bosses is bring in like 3 Life Flasks, and that'll help you a lot there because Utility Flasks aren't as useful for bosses. And as far as your other defenses, you have Determination, Grace, Skitterbots as well, which will help like slow the boss a bit. And it is a very tanky build. And obviously the totems will take a lot of like, they'll taunt things off you. Very comfortable build to play. I would recommend, if you haven't played it yourself, ask somebody that has, and they'll probably give it a glowing recommendation. It was one of the best builds in the last league. So very happy to recommend this build. So the Pantheons for this is Brine King. We get freeze immunity once we do the Peruna, the Challenger. And we have reduced shock effect from Soul of Garakan. The Bandits for this is skill points, so you kill them all. Take a look at the Flasks. They have nerfed the charges when you're hit by an enemy. I think it's like 80 or 81 item level you need now to get 3 charges. And obviously it's going to be pretty hard to roll because that is the tier 1 roll now. But that is ideally what you want to do. Early game, doing reduced charges will be fine, but yeah, extended boss fights will be rough. Let's do the frequently asked questions that we do for builds to make sure we've checked everything off. Can the build have mana issues? So while you're leveling, you're going to be using a mana flask for quite a while. Sometimes you can switch to life tap as early as 40, 45. However, it can be a little rough and drain quite a lot of life. So a lot of people like switching at like 55, 60. And then you'll kind of have enough life regen that it's not absolutely destroying you. There is also the option of super late game of switching to Inspiration instead of life tap. And you will need 2 rings with -8 mana cost on them. And you will also need to take the Tireless Wheel. So that is an option for mana as well. As for financial hurdles, this is an amazing solo self-found build, and I've done it multiple times with insanely min-max gear. So it's not something you need to be Trade League for. Things like Diadem, Dawn, and Reign of Splinters are also very common, so even though quite a lot of people want them, they won't stay expensive for very long. The biggest drawback for this build is that it has delayed damage, so make sure that's something you're okay with playing before choosing this build. Socket pressure is a little rough on this build while using life tap, and you won't have any spare gem sockets, so make sure that you have everything placed correctly. The easiest thing to drop is going to be the Flame Surge Arcanist brand thing, and you don't need to use Infernal Cry. I find that I have enough damage without it, but it is just to cover the bosses in Ash for an extra more fire damage. Another thing you could drop as well would be Culling Strike on the Blink Arrow setup in the chest. When you're killing a boss with this, you're basically placing your totems, keeping your frenzy up, and just running around. It's very comfortable. You will also have like Arcanist brand Flame Surge, and you just slap that on the boss and it'll last for quite a while. It won't actually consume your ignite, but it'll put an extra burn on the boss, doing more damage. So it is 25% more damage. Pretty significant, so make sure you are using it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Sub if you liked the video. Good luck in the upcoming Lake of Kalandra expansion. And more importantly, try to die less than I do.